Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a what's new in vRealize 8.3. I know it's a bit late. I've been under the pump recently doing a lot of on-site POCs and other stuff. I just haven't had time to scratch myself. But today I found myself with some spare time and I have to tick some things off my list, and one of them is this video. And I'll also, as part of this, be doing a salt stack 101 video series similar to my other ones as well. Obviously, because with 8.3 we've obviously got a little bit of integration with SaltStack, which for those who are running vRealize Advanced or Enterprise, I believe, get it for free, right? So really good win-win. It's a great combination, and I'll talk about that a bit later. As usual, this will be basically my top what's new. Obviously there's a ton of stuff in every release, from bug fixes to performance increases to, you know, little bits and pieces that, you know, some people may use or may not, but I'll just be covering, I guess, the things that I think that are the most important in this release. And you know, they may or may not be what others think are important, but this is what, based on what I see in the field with a lot of large enterprise customers and small customers and medium-sized customers and everything in between, that, you know, things that they really want to be able to see and the common things I get asked for. All right. So now some might be saying that SaltStack integration is the biggest one. I disagree. That's very far down my list, and I'll tell you why when I get there. But in all honesty, this first one is great. It's something that, you know, I've had a lot of ask for, and it's usually those operational type capabilities. So this one is actually being able to change ownership of an existing deployment. So, you know, that's pretty big. As of right now, we can actually come in here and we can change owners. Now I don't own this, as expired, this one. So let's actually do a deployment so we're able to see that. We'll just do a hello world deploy one here, and we'll be able to change. Yeah, that'll do. Alright, cool. So that's going to go off and do the deployment. So I'll just wait for that to finish. It should be pretty soon. Okay, so we've got our demo deployment there. Just deployed a single machine and load balancer. I can now change owner of that particular deployment. You know, to something like that, and it'll change the user that owns it, right? So huge operational benefits in that. Obviously, being able to have, you know, someone leaves, be able to transfer ownership of them, being able to, as a whole, as a project, maybe you are running projects as a project, and you want to hand it over to BAU, and then you assign ownership and control over to those people, right? So the next big one in what's new with 8.3, I reckon, would be secrets, being able to handle encrypted strings, essentially. So if we have a look at our infrastructure here and we go to secrets, so here we're able to create secret values, and then we're able to consume them in the blueprint or in ABX functions. So this was one of the huge things that let down ABX, and I still always went back to VRO when handling encrypted things, because actions could only do anything in clear text. We can now reference those, you know, we can have reference those secrets into ABX so that we're able to store them locally, which is awesome. They don't show up in any logs, they're all hashed out, it's all done properly, and they're available to be used. So, you know, this to me was one of the big ones. And I'm able to then reference them in blueprints as well, and no one can see what it is, right? So, and this is obviously the point of it, right? Is that, you know, especially in some more advanced automation, you might be able to run things with certain service accounts and other things, and you know, up until now, you either had to really do something clever, like make your own logic to reach out to secret server or something like that, or it was in plain text, right? So, you know, big thumbs up there. The next one probably would be being able to share T1 gateway. So if anyone has done on-demand network deployments, so I think I might have a blueprint here that's an on-demand dynamic networks. Here we go. And this particular network is an outbound type, so it will automatically create the networks. Now, if you're going to a vSphere endpoint, it uses NSX. But what it does is actually creates a whole new tier 1. You know, if you wanted DHCP and other things, it creates a DHCP service. It does all that stuff for you. It's really good, but it is a different tier 1 every single time. Now, obviously, feedback came back saying it would be great to be able to reuse tier 1s, especially when it comes to you know, I guess simplicity of firewall ruling and other things. But what we can do now is it's got this gateway object. So if you use a gateway object, it means you can reuse a tier 1. So you can reuse existing tier 1s. And you know, that was a pretty common request, and I've actually just come off doing a POC where they wanted exactly that. But they were running 8.2 and didn't have that capability, right? So perfect use case there. Another one is property groups. So if we were to have a look at our where do they keep these? Oh, I think it's under design. Actually, there we go. So property groups. So in 8.3 by default, you'll get a salt stack property group. So this is if you deploy salt stack, it will automatically put this in here for you. But this is where you can have groups, I guess your property groups, so you don't have to then specify them in each blueprint, right? You still need to call and assign the values of those properties in a property group, but they're already predefined, right? So you just basically call them. Awesome. Again, something that's been asked for a long time and was available in 7, has now come back in. Another one would be the onboarding. So there was a small improvement made to onboarding. So if anyone's ever actually done this, when you go to, where is it? I'm blind. Onboarding. So when you create an onboarding plan, it would just move the machines. That's all it moved. Even if they were coming from AWS or from Azure or even from vSphere, if they had additional disks added and other things, you had no reference to any of that. It was just the machine object. So now disks come over with onboarding, which is really good. So I'm hoping soon that load balancers and other things will come over as well. But disks, great start, meaning that you get more of your objects. And to be fair, most IaaS provision stuff will just be the IaaS machine and disks, and that way you can manage the disks independently, etc., etc. And the next one is actually to do with disks, but it's support for deploying disks onto SDRS cluster on vSphere. So that's now supported. That now has the smarts. There was always issues under 7 with SDRS, because if you had a huge deployment with a number of machines, it would do like the disk check first, and then it will try and deploy, and SDRS put it all on one disk, and you end up getting a failure because that, you know, you ran out of capacity because it didn't do base check. Anyway, it was a big mess. SDRS stuff is now supported in 8.3. I haven't used that in a long time now. I've pretty much moved over to vSAN for most of my lab. But you know, there's a lot of organizations that still have and want to make use of their investment of fiber attached storage or iSCSI or something equivalent in their big arrays, and you know, storage DRS is a good way to be able to manage that, and it's good to be able to actually support that now too. It makes, you know, adding your disk profiles, your storage profiles a lot simpler, right? Now the next big one is the reuse of Azure Resource Groups. So this was a bugbear. This was actually one that I raised. Geez, it would be probably good over 12 months now. But because obviously, you know, it's picked up in Steam, managing multiple public clouds is picked up, and this is a must for any enterprise organization that wants to scale in Azure. right? So I'm always a big advocate of using the, use the cloud endpoints to your advantage, right? It makes sense to be able to use your Microsoft licensing and credits and everything else they throw at you for, it might be dev purposes or other things, and it makes sense to do that. It makes sense to use AWS for particular services and other things they've got. It makes sense to use vSphere for huge, maybe running your data, because data is expensive to get out of public cloud. Either way, there's always a smart way to use multiple clouds, right? If you just go all in on one, you end up losing out somewhat. But if you pick the cloud endpoints for the right purposes, it can be really, really effective. So one of them was Azure, and I had many customers that wouldn't use VRA 8 because it couldn't scale in Azure. And what do I mean by this is, now, as long as things haven't changed, because obviously public cloud moves very, very fast, Azure, within your Azure subscription or your region, you're allowed to have, you can have 25,000 machines, but you can only have 2,000 resource groups, right? So the way VRA 8 used to be used is every time you spun up, even if a blueprint had one VM on it, that's it. It would actually create a resource group under the hood and attach that VM to it. Now, this was done for multiple reasons, one of them being load balancer, if you wanted to be able to use a load balancer. So if you attach a load balancer and a whole bunch of machines, they'd all be put in a dynamically created Azure resource group. Now, the downside to this is if by chance that you only, most of your deployments are single machine or a couple of machines, then all of a sudden you've artificially limited your Azure subscription down to 2,000 VMs, right? And that's not including, if you had already existing resource groups, which you probably did, right? So it really lowered the scale on how you could consume Azure through VRA 8. So, and under VRA 7, it supported the use of either creating new or using existing. Now we can use existing. So what I'll do, I won't actually deploy this right now, but I'll just show you where it is. If we have a look at, I'll just do this demo one, that'll be fine. If I go and create VM, cool. So under properties, we should be able to see resource group name. So yeah, you can specify your resource group that you want it to use, and it will use existing. That way, in a lot of organizations, they generally have resource groups that have been created for very specific purposes or what it might be, and I can now use that if I wanted to, right? So it just gives the flexibility that if by chance you don't want to use the dynamically created resource groups that VRA will manage and destroy and everything for you, you can use your own, and that way, this particular customer I was talking about, they physically couldn't do that because they had more machines in Azure than what we could support through the amount of resource groups in that region type thing. So anyway, that's a really good one. Another one is I really like, is if we go to Service Broker, is a view of your count, your resource usage, right? So I don't have any right now because I've undeployed everything except for that one now, but that wouldn't have updated yet. But it gives you a count of how many VMs, storage gigabyte. It basically lets you know what you've consumed, right? Really, really handy. Like, it's really just a UI thing. It's great. It gives me instant, knowledge that, oh, okay, I'm consuming this much, right? And back on the integration front there, I might actually, while I'm doing this, if I go to Cloud Assembly, I'll go back. As Service Broker, I've got to get used to provisioning more through Service Broker. Then I get the nice flashy icons. Why wouldn't you want those nice flashy icons? So, weather vSphere, I'll submit that. Cool. Alright, see, look, who wouldn't want that icon? It's better than that one. So that'll go off, and hopefully it might actually show me by the time the video is finished. If we go back to Cloud Assembly, we actually also get alerts. So I don't have any at the moment. My lab's all healthy. That's great. But this is a link into vRops, where it'll actually give you what alerts have been triggered with your deployed stuff. So it gives you that insight into your deployed workloads, which is really handy because it's one less. Unless I really need to dive deep, it's one less console I've got to log into to be able to quickly view and get a state of health of my existing deployments. Right. Now, I'll probably go Salt Stack next. Now, I love Salt. Actually, diving into Salt, I've sort of dabbled with it many years ago. I haven't really done much with it, so I'm bringing myself up to speed with it all. But the integration wasn't where I thought it was going to be for this. So if we have a look, and let's go here. If I wanted my cloud template, I'll go to this demo one that I obviously broke before. We're putting the Azure machine on it. We'll remove that. If we went to our config management, you can see it's not there, right? So there's no blueprint or cloud template. I should start calling them cloud templates. There's no cloud template level integration yet. So what the integration is if I went to Lifecycle Manager, so let's log in here. All right. Environments, we can see that Salt Stack has been deployed here under VRA. So that's vRealize Automation, Salt Stack, something, config, there you go, vRealize Automation, there, it's right there. VRA SSC. So that's been deployed, and you can see it's linked to VRA there. Very, very cool. So when you deploy Salt Stack through VRA, it does everything that needs to happen. It actually makes the integrations, and it actually enables you to be able to browse to it from the UI. So if we go back here, we can see that we've got Salt Stack config there. We can go to that. I haven't set up any additional usernames, it's just basically default here. I think that's it, yep. And we can see that, yeah, I've been starting to add minions in there, but we've got our dashboards and settings and config and everything as you would have had with Salt Stack Enterprise if you're a Salt Stack Enterprise user previously, except it's been put into the VMware's UI format there. But if we go back now to our Cloud Services console, cool. If we go to Cloud Assembly, doing the deployment that way, we'll add those. I think I showed them previously in the property groups. So it adds this in with the correct details of your deployment. So mine's that, and obviously that's the master fingerprint there. And it also adds in the integration point as well. So there it is there. So it does all that for you. You don't need to actually do anything with it. Obviously this particular side of the fence isn't quite there yet from the fact that I can't utilize it on the design canvas. But if you do want to utilize it, the way to do it is as follows. I do have a cloud template that I was doing testing with. So let's have a look at the Salt testing there. Now we can go to the machine, and we can see here we have to do the integration through the cloud config. You can see I run CMD. Now I'm doing an online install, so obviously if you were there's multiple ways to install salt. I'm just took the easy way out because I've got internet access. Obviously, if you're in a more secure environment or didn't have direct access to internet, you would grab it from somewhere else. But this installs salt or brings everything down. I then run salt, and you can see there I'm actually referencing the property group. So you can see property group got salt stack configuration.master address, gives the URL which it's going to attach to. That will then request a certificate approval essentially. But doing this salt call here, this was just testing setting a grain. So I just wanted to essentially, a grain is a custom property for salt stack really at the end of the day, which I can then create actions based on and create grouping based on those particular properties or grains. And you can see that I just said, just for testing, VRA managed is true, so that comes through, and I could possibly group them, or I can trigger events based on particular properties of a machine. Right, so we'll have more on that when I do my 101 series on SaltStack. But this then sets it up, and it will not automatically add it into Salt. You would have to manually approve that, but you can actually use, and again I'll get back to this on another series, but use a reactor and based on a certain format or based on a grain like I have there, it'll automatically add that instead of needing, automatically approve it rather than having a manual approval, right? And I'll show that in future videos. So that's the salt stack integration, and I think really there was a bunch of networking stuff. So essentially now you can add additional security groups or change security groups day 2 and then reapply the blueprint over existing deployment, and it's going to be able to allow you to do an iterative deployment. So before, I believe it used to actually blow it away and recreate it depending on what those things you dropped on the canvas was, and I believe security groups and that were it. But now you can actually modify these day 2, apply it, and it's just going to add that, so you can iteratively build up your security model on a blueprint to figure out what happens and whatnot, and it obviously makes it more efficient. There's a lot more efficiencies on ABX side the fence as well, and just the way it uses K8 pods. Then if a few extra bits and pieces when it comes to being able to manage networking day 2 from day 2 actions was good, and there was added support for AVS, so the Azure VMware services and the Google VMware services as well. Full support in for them, so they should work, and that's really it, I guess. There was improvements made to and updating of the Terraform inbuilt Terraform capability. And that's, yeah, I think there was actually quite a lot of stuff, but as I said, I focused on what I think was what I guess were bugbears or things that customers really wanted, and just went down the list from there. Now let's just actually see, before I finish this video up, I did do a deployment. I just want to see if my service broker, hey, yeah, so before I had 0, obviously I deployed that weather app internally, so we can actually see my VMware count, my storage, and my compute. It gives me a top level there, which is great, and it allows me just to be able to see what my usages are, especially if I do have limits. I obviously don't have limits on this one, but it's good to have that in there. Alright, so that's it. What's new in 8.3? I'm really looking forward to 8.4. Hopefully there's a lot more or tighter salt stack integration there, and there's a few other things on the cards as well, which I'll put forward. I don't know whether they're going to make it or not, but fingers crossed. Anyway, stay safe out there. Hope you enjoyed. Until next time, see you, bye.